What's up guys, my name is Tony, and today I'm going to give you a quick and painless guide on Vim. Vim is a blazingly fast, keyboard-centric text editor that leverages different modes in order to facilitate an efficient experience. The defaults for Vim, however, are not very good, and today I'm going to show you how to go from this to this. We can search for a specific string here in our project using Grep, and we can navigate this file manager with fuzzy finding. We can use an LSP to let us know what this key action is, and we can go to the definition of this, and if we want to find out where all these key actions are referenced, we can go to all the references. Can easily manipulate text here, yank this entire block, paste it above, and maybe we want to switch focus stack here to spawn. So we'll start typing and we have auto completion here. And of course, if we make a typo, we do get an error here. We can just press GL and we see that there is no variant or associated item named typo. So this is literally just Vim. This is not VS Code. This is not IntelliJ, whatever. This is just vanilla Vim with a little bit of configuration tweaked into it. So at the end of this guide, your Vim can go from looking like this to full-fledged IDE. To get things started today, we're gonna need some dependencies. I have a written article to accompany this tutorial and a link below the subscribe button that will show you how to install these on your favorite operating systems. But for today's guide, we're gonna be using Arch, by the way, so here's what we're gonna need. So we'll do sudo pacman-s, and we're gonna need git Vim, obviously, grep, which will be a tool to grep strings in a file system, fd, which will be a dependency for our fzf later, fzf for fuzzy finding, and rust analyzer, which is going to be an LSP for our Rust project. So as you can see, I already have these installed on my machine, but I'm going to hit yes anyway. And there we go. We are ready to jump into the config. So we're going to put everything in a folder called .vim, which will be there by default whenever you install Vim here. We can see we've got .vim, .viminfo, and .vimrc. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the .vimrc file because that is what Vim points to whenever it launches. So let's actually Vim into that file to show you what it does. So type vim.vimrc. And we have an empty vimrc file here, which means we've got no config, and these are the defaults for that. So the first thing I want to do is show you what this file does. So in order to do that, let's jump into insert mode here by typing I, and let's type echo M. I use Vim, by the way. And we can leave insert mode by hitting escape. Let's type :W to save the file. And let's source this file immediately by typing :so. And as you can see on the bottom here, it's echoing to the console that I use Vim, by the way. Now, we can also demonstrate this by typing :Q to quit out of Vim. And we just type vim.vimrc again, and we're going to see that print statement there. I use Vim, by the way, whenever we launch Vim, because that's what's in our vimrc. So let's get out of that file here and let's clear the console. We're going to live in the .vim folder today, so let's go ahead and cd into it. And what we want to do is essentially tell the vimrc to point to this folder so that we can modularize and version control our Vim config. So to begin that process, let's go ahead and make a file called vimrc in this folder. So let's do vim dot. And I want to show you guys what the netrw looks like here. Netrw is the file explorer that's built into Vim by default. And for my personal experience, it's all I've needed for a file explorer. I don't need any trees. I don't need any oil.nvim or anything like that. I just use netrw. And it actually has a cheat sheet right at the top. So inside of netrw, let's create that vimrc file by hitting Shift 5. Or %, and let's type vimrc. And now we're in a vimrc file here, and let's actually echo something else in here by entering insert mode once again with I, and we'll type echo M, subscribe to my channel. We'll hit escape, :W, and now we need to tell our original vimrc to point to this vimrc. So what we can do is we can do :E ~/.vimrc, and that'll open up that vimrc file. And instead of I use Vim, by the way, let's delete this. Let's hit Shift C to delete this line and enter insert mode. And we'll put source ~/.vim/vimrc. We'll hit escape, :W, and now if we source this file, we see subscribe to my channel, which is coming from that .vim vimrc file. And we can quit out of this with :Q. Now every time we type vim, we're going to see that subscribe to my channel because the .vimrc file is actually pointing to .vim vimrc, which is exactly what we want. So let's move on to the next step. All right, let's go ahead and clear this. And let's jump back into that vimrc file here. I'm going to do vim dot here just so I can show netrw off a little bit more. And I'm going to hit Shift G to go to the bottom of this list and hit enter to open that vimrc file. We don't need this echo statement anymore, so let's just hit Shift C to clear that and enter insert mode. And right now let's set the most important option in my opinion is number. So let's type set number and we'll do escape :W to save that. And as soon as we source this file, we should start seeing line numbers. So let's do :SO to source it. And there we go. We got line numbers. So the next thing I think is really important for me is relative numbers. So we'll hit O to enter insert mode here in a new line. And let's type set relative number, escape :W, :SO. And it's hard to see what's going on here with only 2. So let's add a bunch of lines and we'll type here. Now we see that the line numbers are relative. So instead of the first line saying 1, it actually says 8 because it's 8 lines above my cursor. And so what I can do is hit 8K if I want to get there. And now you see that instead of line 9, it says 8 for here because that is actually 8 lines below me. So I can do 8J. And let's say I want to delete this line, DD, and it's gone. So that's relative line numbers. It doesn't really make that much sense in a small file like this, but as soon as you start to get to that 1000 line file kind of range, you're going to see a lot of value in this. Now we've got these 2 basic options here. A couple of things that I need for tabs. So for example, if we do if true tab, we're going to see that the tab actually goes 8 characters by default, which is horrendous. And it doesn't actually even auto indent when I did if true. So we need to fix that with a couple of different options here. So for me, this is what I use on servers and I've just memorized these, but of course I'll provide this in the written article here. Let's do file type, plugin indent on, set expand tab, set shift width equals 4, set soft tab stop equals 4, set tab stop equals 4. So with that collection, we got one more here. Let's do set smart indent, and now we can save this file, source it. So now in theory, if we type if true, we do have that smart indent, and it's also going 4 spaces instead of 8. So that actually is a pretty big game changer for me as far as Vim. With just those 5 lines, it makes it a lot better. And in fact, with this and maybe one more option, I think this is very much usable for 95% of my needs. But we're gonna get way more into the weeds here. Let's delete some of those lines here. Now, one more thing I wanna jump into here is syntax on. And if we source that, now you can see syntax is on. So this is a game changer for me as well because I can't really read if it's not on. So again, this is what it looks like with syntax off. It's kind of unparsable for me at a glance. And this is what it looks like with it on. And this is, in my opinion, probably one of the most important, if not the most important options. And that's going to be about it. This is my drop-in 10-line config, if you will, for servers and for ISO images. But let's definitely go further than this because this is just the bare minimum. So let's modularize these options here into their own file. Let's put them in an options file. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift V, Shift G to enter visual line mode and select the entire file, and we're going to hit Y to yank it. And now we can make that options file. We'll do :E options.vim. We will paste that entire file with Shift P. Let's save that with :W. Now if we just hit Control O, if you guys look at the bottom, we're back in that vimrc file. We can highlight everything here. Again, same way, Shift V, Shift G. And instead of having the options here, we're just going to source that options file. So we'll hit Shift C to clear everything and enter insert mode. And we have to do the entire path here. So we'll do source /.vim /options.vim. Escape :W. We'll actually quit out of Vim here to demonstrate this. Vim dot, and there you go. We've got options Vim, and we've got our vimrc. We've got the syntax. Here's options.vim, and we see all of our options are working. So let's move on to keybinds. All right, so we're gonna jump into some keybinds here. So let's go ahead and go back to the vimrc file with Control O. And since we know we're about to add a keybinds file, let's actually just preemptively source it. So what I'm gonna do is Shift V, Y, P to yank that line here. And To get to options here, there's a couple different ways to go about that. You can do FO, which will start to find all the O's on the line, and then you can hit semicolon to go forward or comma to go backward. That's one way to do it. Another way would just to hit W a couple times to get there. Really your choice there. Once we get to the options, I'm going to do CW to change that word to Keybinds. And hit escape, save that file. And now we need to actually make the Keybinds file. So let's do :E Keybinds.vim. And in this file, let's start adding some keybinds. So the first thing we want to do is set the leader key. And the leader key is a key that you press before hitting a key combo in order to bind things. So it's standard practice to use space for that. So we're going to do let map leader equal quote quote, and that's the space key there. And let's actually make one bind here. So we'll do no remap leader CD, and we're going to bind that to :ex cr. Go ahead and explain that. So what that does is that does a normal mode remap. So whenever I'm in normal mode and I hit space CD, it's going to execute the ex command followed by enter. So let's save that and let's source that. So we have that keybind, but before I demonstrate the keybind, I want to show what ex is. We've talked about it a little bit already, but ex is what's going to bring us back to the netartw, right? So we'll go Control O to get back to this file. So we'll go back into Keybinds.vim, and basically we've remapped space CD in normal mode to automatically run netartw. And why I chose space CD is that it sort of mirrors the GNU util CD in bash here for change directory. So let's test that out. Let's hit space CD. Boom. There we go. We don't need to ever type :ex again. We just have space CD binded to netartw. All right, so we'll certainly add more keybinds later, but for right now, let's move into plugins. So for plugins, there is a plugin manager called Vim Plug, but I wrote my own 10-line function to handle plugins because I don't feel the need to use a plugin manager to run git clone on my machine. And it's more or less a 10-line script that is a glorified wrapper for git clone. So you can take it from the written guide and paste it in, but I'm going to go through it a little bit and explain it. So let's add a file here called plugins.vim. And again, I'm just going to type this out here. So that's just going to specify the directory where we install the plugins. And I'm going to make the function here. This function is going to take in a GitHub repository. GitHub repository will be something like name of the user and name of the plugin. We're just going to take the second half of that, and that's going to be the name of the repo. And for the path, we're going to install it directly into our path here. Vim plugged, and then the name of the plugin. So first we're going to check if that directory exists. And then we're also going to check if the plugin directory exists. And if that doesn't exist, we're going to have to make it here. So we'll do makedir. And we're going to have to pass in that -p flag for makedir because that'll specify that it will make it recursively. And end that if statement here. And we're going to execute this git clone command here. And then we're going to go ahead and add this new plugin directory path to our runtime path. And that is basically a 10-line function here that's just going to install or ensure that the plugin is installed, and we can just run that right in this file here. And let's add this to our vimrc. So we'll go back to our vimrc here with Control O. We'll yank that and paste that again, and now we can just press FKCW and rename that to plugins.vim. Now we can save that. Space CD to go back to netartw. Go back to that plugins file here. And let's head over to this Tokyonight Vim plugin GitHub link. And let's take a look at this plugin here, and we can use this as our test. So we have a simple color scheme plugin here for Tokyonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to the installation section, and we're just going to copy this. This is the URL of the plugin. So we'll just do call ensure, and we'll go ahead and just paste that in here. And then we'll close that out with a parenthesis. So if we save that, and if we did everything right, once we source this file, theoretically it should clone this repo into that vim plugged Tokyonight Vim directory. So let's go ahead and source this file with :so. And there we go. Worked perfectly here. As we can see here, it cloned it right into that directory, and now we have access to that plugin. So we'll hit enter to get right back into that file. And if everything worked correctly, we should be able to just set our color scheme here with color scheme Tokyonight. Yeah, there it is. I just pressed tab to complete that. And there we are. We've got a little 12-line script that acts as a plugin manager for us. So we don't need to use any kind of external tools. We can just use this. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to customizing the Tokyonight theme. So for each plugin, I do typically have its own config file if there's options that need to be tinkered with in that plugin. So let's go ahead and create one for colors. So we'll do space CD to get back to netrw. And we got the % here to make a new file called colors.vim. And in this file, we'll just do a couple options here. If we look at the plugin and GitHub, we do see some options here. They recommend setting the term GUI colors option on and enabling the italic font. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and enter insert mode with I and then type set term GUI colors. We'll do let G Tokyonight enable italic equals 1. And of course, we'll set the color scheme to Tokyonight. Now we need to actually add this file to our vimrc. So we'll do leader CD, hit Shift G to get to the vimrc file, hit enter. We'll yank this, FP CW, and type colors.vim, hit escape, :W, save that. And in theory, we could just source this. And there you go. Now we've got the term GUI colors, and we do have italicized text as well now. So this is looking a lot better, and it's matching my general color scheme. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step here. I think the next big thing for me is one of the best plugins in Neovim is called Telescope. And we can achieve the same thing in vanilla Vim here with fzf or fzf.vim, depending on which region you're from. So let's add that here to the plugin list. Just yank this and do CIB. So it's going to be June Gun fzf. And then we're also going to want June Gun fzf.vim. So we're good on that. So now we can source this, and it's going to install fzf and fzf.vim or fzf.vim again. So now if we close Vim, let's clear the terminal here and reopen it. We should have access to something like files. Yeah, there it is. So we have access to files here, and that's pretty good. And we can search this file list with fuzzy finding. So we just start typing plugins, and there we go. Just hit enter and we're right there. So that's gonna be a lot faster than doing the netrw approach to searching files. But we do wanna bind that. We don't wanna type files every time. We wanna bind that. So let's go ahead and make a file specifically for that. Let's go back to netrw here, and let's create fzf.vim. Let's have a couple keybinds here. Let's do normal, no remap here. Leader FF. It's going to be files, enter. Leader FO is going to be history, which will open fzf on a recent file list. Let's do leader FB for buffers, which will open all the files in the buffer list. And that's good enough for right now. We're also going to want to implement rip grep here directly to fzf. So that's going to be leader FG for me, and it's going to be RG space. And I'll just kind of show what that does. So we'll do space CD to get to the netrw one more time. Shift G to get to the vimrc. And let's add fzf.vim to our vimrc. Now we have access to those keybinds, space FF. And we can just start typing stuff and move around the files like this instead. And let's type space FG. And there we see that prompt on the bottom left, RG. And in RG, we can use rip grep to search for a specific string. And in this case, let's try map. So this is going to tell us where every instance of the word map is in our current directory. So it looks like we've got a couple different options here. And within this list, we can do some fuzzy finding. So see, I know it's actually going to be in Keybinds. There it is. I can navigate this list with Control-N or Control-P. Now I'm right in that file, right at that line where I need to be. So that is very, very powerful for moving around file systems, and it's pretty much all you need. It is very, very similar to Telescope, but it's just a little bit more lightweight. So let's get out of there and move on to the next step. We are going to be using Lightline here for our Vim config, and that's just going to give us a visual indicator of what mode we're in, what file we're in, etc. And so let's just scroll down to go straight here and grab this itchy ny lightline.vim. We'll copy that. Let's actually open up Vim again here. Let's go to that plugins file, and let's just paste that right in here. And let's source that, and it should start installing it. And there it is. So if we just run set last status equals 2, we do see we're going to have access to that light line right there. And that is the default light line. We do want to make that color scheme match our Tokyonight. And in order to do that, let's just jump into our colors file. So space ff colors.vim. Let's add a option in this file here. And I'm getting this straight from the Tokyonight color scheme directory here. It's going to be let g lightline, and then we're going to set that equal to color scheme Tokyonight. So let's type let g lightline, set that to color scheme Tokyonight. And inside of this file, let's also set last status equals 2. Now, if we reopen that file here, we're going to see we have that Tokyonight colored lightline. So that's a super minimal lightline setup for us. We could go crazy and customize it a little bit more with some nerd font icons or get branch stuff, what have you. But for today, for right now, this is all we need. Super minimal. And that's it. So we could finally move on to the last part, which is going to be the LSP. This is going to be the hardest part to go from scratch, and I've dedicated quite a bit of time to making this file as minimal as possible. So I will go ahead and show that now. So here we can take a look at a brief overview of it. And what it does is it sets up a list of LSP servers. And for today, we're just going to be using the Rust Analyzer server. And then it will add some basic key maps here like GD to go to definition, GR to go to references, Shift K to hover, and GL to show some diagnostics. And some built-in omnifunc here for some completion. So I'm going to grab this entire file here and just copy it, copy a raw file. And back in our Vim directory, let's go ahead and make a file called lsp.vim. And I've went ahead and pasted it here. And there it is. So once we have the options here, we actually have to install the LSP plugin. So let's do space ff plugins. And let's add it to the list here. And we're going to be using this LSP Vim 9 plugin made by YEGAPPAN. Not even going to try to pronounce that. So that's going to be YEGAPPAN. LSP. We'll save that and source it. And there we go. Looks like it installed it in our plug directory. We'll quit that and clear this. And we do want to make sure that that works. So let's go ahead and navigate to a Rust file here. So for me, I've got a Rust project here in repos oxwm. This is a window manager that I'm working on in Rust. And let's open up this project here with vim dot. We can jump right into a file here. And let's go to main.rs. And let's say I want to know what the window manager actually is. So if I hover over it and hit Shift K, it tells me that it is a struct, and it tells me everything about that struct here. But even better, I want to go to definition of it. I could just hit GD, and now I'm in the file where it's defined. And again, I showed this at the top of the video, but GR will show me all of the references in a quick fix list. I can navigate that pretty quickly here. And yeah, I'm right inside of a Rust project using vanilla Vim with a few plugins and a plugin manager that I wrote with 12 lines of code. We have a lot of powerful tools here at our disposal, and we're just using regular Vim here. So that's basically going to be it. All right, that's going to be it for today's video. If you have any questions or recommendations on any other Linux related content, as usual, just drop a comment and I'll put it in the pipeline. And it would not be a proper ending without an obligatory Neofetch.